Hey everyone, today we are once again at large in Appalachia, this time in the Poor Valley section of Washington County, Virginia and Smith County, Virginia. The Poor Valley technically starts near Mendota, Virginia and runs along the North Fork of the Holston River into Saltville, Virginia. The poor in Poor Valley refers to the soil. Although the loamy soil can be very fertile in Poor Valley, the land is full of large chunks of limestone, sandstone, shale, and other rocks and minerals, making crop farming sometimes difficult for farmers. I once heard someone say of Poor Valley, it's hard to farm rocks. The section of Poor Valley we're going to be focusing on will be between the Tumbling Creek and Hyder's Gap communities. Let's go down Poor Valley. Around 12,000 years ago, indigenous people traveled and hunted the mountains of what is now southwest Virginia, as the mountains were bursting in abundance with game. In prehistoric times, the area of present-day southwest Virginia was full of megafauna, such as the mastodon and woolly mammoth, which were hunted by Paleo-Indians. Especially near present-day Saltville, the hunting was so good because of the abundance of natural salt licks, which attracted megafauna and other animals to the area. Before the arrival of Europeans, the land was shared as common hunting grounds between the Cherokee and other Native American tribes. Some historians assert that a band of Yuchi Indians inhabited a village along the banks of the North Fork of the Holston River, near present-day Poor Valley, Virginia. Some of the first white landowners in Poor Valley were members of the Smith and Stewart families in the 1770s. Henry Smith II bought land in present-day Russell, Washington, and Smith counties, and eventually the Stewart family established the Stewart Land and Cattle Company, which became the largest cattle operation east of the Mississippi for a very long time. The Stewart Land and Cattle Company employed many residents of Poor Valley well into the 20th century, especially in the Tumbling Creek community. As more people came to settle along the North Fork of the Holston, some of the first families to settle in this section of Poor Valley were Duffs, Eastridges, Perkins, and Sneeds, according to Benita Smith in her 2010 book, A Collection of Poor Valley Memories. Many of these early family names are still found in Tumbling Creek and Hyder's Gap today, along with Hendersons, Heltons, Johnsons, Cardwells, and several more. There is a bit of Civil War history in the Tumbling Creek community. In 1864, during General Stoneman's raid into Saltville, as Union soldiers were coming through Saltville and the surrounding areas, they were doing raids on family farms for food and supplies. According to stories passed through the Eastridge family of Poor Valley, when the Union soldiers came to Abigail Eastridge's door, they were met face to face with her holding an axe. Abigail Eastridge reportedly told the soldiers to take what they wanted, but they would have to kill her to take her horse. The Union soldiers reportedly left Abigail's residence without harming her or taking her horse. Though it may not look like it today, Poor Valley once fostered a thriving sense of community in the early to mid-20th century, full of family farms and vegetable gardens, log schoolhouses that often doubled as a Sunday prayer meeting house, and community stores where folks young and old would gather just for the heck of it. For many residents and families in the valley, the church was the backbone of the community. Many would gather to worship at the Tumbling Creek Primitive Baptist Church in Poor Valley, which was established in 1782. According to the late Elizabeth Eastridge Holmes, quote, they were also called hard-shell Baptists. A funeral would sometimes last until after dark, and they would bury a person after dark. Each year, the residents of Poor Valley would look forward to the June camp meeting, held by the Tumbling Creek Primitive Baptist Church on the fourth Sunday in June. The June camp meeting would last about 3 days and was a chance for great merriment and fellowship down in the valley. Friends and families would gather for meals and to swap harvests from their gardens, and the young folks would use the weekend for general socialization. Elizabeth Eastridge Holmes also recalled that, quote, the June meeting was the highlight of the year for people in Poor Valley at Tumbling Creek. People came in buggies, by horseback, cars. She recalled that her brother Jack's favorite thing about the June camp meeting was the delicious homemade ice cream. Mrs. Holmes also said that, quote, of course everyone was excited about seeing kin people and friends, for they seldom saw one another. The June camp meeting continued for several decades, but by the late 70s or early 80s, attendance had dwindled. Music was also a cherished treat in Poor Valley. Many of its inhabitants were musical, playing instruments such as banjo, guitar, and fiddle, and singing hymns full of harmony and grace on Sunday mornings and all throughout the week. A friend of mine named Sharon Rose has a late great-great-grandfather who lived in the valley, named Charles Boardwine. Mr. Boardwine's banjo ability was renowned in the valley, and he was even personal friends with bluegrass legends Carter and Ralph Stanley of Dickinson County, Virginia. In my own family, there were several talented singers who mostly sang in church and sometimes around the house. My great-great-uncle Fred Duff from Poor Valley, Virginia, was a banjo picker, and in 1970 he toured with George Wynn, a bluegrass mandolin picker from Richmond, Virginia, as part of a USO tour that included stops in the US, Germany, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. Here's a snippet of my grandfather, Jack Eastridge, 91, of Poor Valley, Virginia, discussing his Uncle Fred Duff's banjo playing.
Uncle Fred, he's dead now too, but Fred was just young. He picked the banjo, and he's dead now. He's been dead quite a few years. But he's about a year older than me, and he'd come out there and start picking of a late sort of evening, and he'd prop that foot up on that railing and start picking. And Mr. Darnell, that lived in the big house behind Allen Eastridge, he worked out there at the plaster coating. When he'd come in from work, a lot of times, and Fred'd get out there picking, you could hear him over, and it used to be a little old store set there, and we gather up in there at that little old store. And old Bill Darnell, he picked the clawhammer style, and he couldn't stand it. He'd go in there and get his banjo there on the porch, and he'd sit there and they'd get together and play it. You could hear one, and then the other one, Lori's picking down, and then you'd hear the other one pick up.
That's so funny.
And then it wouldn't be long to hear you'd see Fred coming off the hill. He'd go up there and sit on the porch, and they'd sit there and pick. And then the rest of us, as boys, around there, we'd go up there too and sit on the porch and listen to him picking. And when he first started picking, Mommy Duff would tune his banjo for him, and she helped him to get started like that. Gosh, he played in some big band up there at, out of Richmond there.
There were a few black families living in Poor Valley in the early to mid-20th century before desegregation. I can recall my late Uncle Dennis telling stories of playing with his black friends in the valley growing up, but they couldn't go to school together. Although my uncle went to school in nearby Hyder's Gap, his black friends rode a bus to Bristol, Virginia, near the Tennessee border 30 miles away, at the Douglas School. My grandfather remembers what he called swapping labor with the Blevins family, where his family would help them harvest corn and vice versa. In the 1970s, Poor Valley produced its own local celebrity. A man named Homer Davenport was mentioned in a book written by Peter Jenkins titled A Walk Across America in 1979. Jenkins encountered Homer Davenport, a lifelong native of Poor Valley in the Saltville area, and wrote about him in his book that detailed his journey across America. Jenkins was amazed with Homer's independent, self-sufficient mountain lifestyle and marveled at Homer's inner and outer strength. After the release of Jenkins' book in 1979, people came from all over to catch a glimpse of Homer to see what Peter Jenkins saw, much to Homer's annoyance. Homer was even mentioned in a piece by National Geographic in April 1977. The story of Homer Davenport has piqued renewed interest in the past few years, and, as storytellers sometimes do, many details have been misremembered or outright fabricated. For example, many insist that Homer lived alone on the mountain. This is untrue, as Homer had a large, close-knit family unit that produced multiple generations, and the Davenport family still lives in the Poor Valley area today. For accurate information concerning the story of Homer Davenport, you can check out Mara Misfit Gaming on YouTube, a channel ran by Homer's great-granddaughter. Today there isn't nearly as much farming in Poor Valley as there used to be. It used to be that if you could clear a field of all the rocks, you could make a decent living. Many farmers in Poor Valley used to farm tobacco, but with government subsidies in the early 2000s, it's no longer a lucrative endeavor. Beginning in the early and mid-20th century, many in the valley began working for local factories and manufacturers, as well as logging companies. Today this is still the case generally. and many residents go to nearby towns such as Saltville, Chilhowie, or Abingdon for work, though there are a few family farms still left in the valley, and many residents maintain family folkways through small-scale farming and gardening. Every year, many locals travel to Poor Valley for its trout fishing, especially at Tumbling Creek in the Clinch Mountain Wildlife Management Area, one of the most beautiful places on God's green earth. If you choose to visit, you better respect the space or else. Well guys, thank you so much for taking a trip down history lane with me to Poor Valley, Virginia. I sure did have fun, and I hope you did too, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.